On this episode I'm going to show you how I waterproof the shower and composting toilet. This is the final episode of the shower and composting toilet install, and I've had to break it up into many episodes. It was quite a long process because I had to build the composting toilet and also I had to tank this entire area, so it would have been a lot faster if I'd got medical grade PVC sheets and just lined the toilet. The reason I didn't go for that was it's quite expensive and I needed a cheaper solution, plus I wanted to build my own composting toilet just to see how I get on, and also because the price of composting toilets is really expensive and I didn't want to be spending that amount of money on a composting toilet. If you stay tuned to the end of this episode, I will give you a walkthrough of the shower and composting toilet, and I will just go through everything in more detail. I will also show you how I installed the copper rail for the curtain. I will also show you how I installed the sheet of perspex for the lighting. So let's get stuck into this episode. Enjoy. It was very dark last night. I didn't get to record a lot of this because it was so dark. But I've got this in. It's all secured. It's secured down here at the bottom into the floor of the van. Then I put this separate part on top of that and I screw down into it here, there, and then on this side, there, and then at the back is actually higher than the front, so to get that 10mm drop I had to put in these packers. I've cut out this front part, I've glued and screwed it, and now I'm going to fill that in with a waterproof silicone sealant. And then the next thing to do is to install this piece of ply under here, and I'm not going to put any screws in that. I'm just going to use some Sikaflex, apply that on, and then use clamps and some wood packers to keep that up. And I will do that now, and then I will show you how I'm going to keep it up. So that's a bit of Sikaflex all around the edge where it's going to be in contact with the wood from underneath. And now what I'm going to do is pop that on, and if you can see, there it is from the inside. Just pop that off there, and then same with here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to use these clamps, and from the inside I can actually grab it here, and then from the other side do the exact same. So I'll just put a clamp under that there and clamp that up. That's the two edges of that taken care of. And what I've done for the middle part here, so I've cut these blocks, so just slide them in. That will prevent the plywood sagging down while the Sikaflex cures. So I have the clamp here on the other side there, and then these two keeping it up, so that'll be good. And then once that's cured, I can then get the bottom section here just under there at the back. So I'll be cutting a piece of plywood and sticking it on the back there. It's basically, so from the inside it'll be just this section here. Okay, so now I have the two of these in. I'm just going to test them. And now I have the seat in place. What you can do then is just clicking these two buttons, you can just pop it off, so it makes it easier to clean. And then I'll pop these back on. so it doesn't actually slam. So when you're finished, you can just close it down and off you go, and that will slowly close. So this is the composting toilet. I now have the seat fitted, and as you can see, this is the bucket I will be shitting in. So then we're going to have urine diverter will be under here. I'm going to have a container for that urine diverter that the urine will be going into. To get the bucket in and out, I'm going to now cut a square in the face of the plywood, and then I'm going to put a piano hinge at the back, so it'll allow me to just from the front lift it up, and then that will give me enough room to lift in and out the bucket. I'm now ready to put the top of the composting toilet in place, but before I do that, I want to do one last thing just to make sure it's completely sealed from any water. What I'm going to do is seal the edges of the plywood with the waterproof silicone, and I will show you what I'm talking about. So here's the seat, and if you can see the edge, like gaps there just along the edge. I'll run a bead of silicone along the edge and then rub it in with my finger and leave that to dry before I actually install it. That's the lid of the composting toilet now secured to the base of the composting toilet. The next step is to install this, and it will be going in like that. So I'm going to secure that now from the inside. The installation of the shower is almost complete. I just have to cut one or two more pieces before I then tank it. So I'm going to go through what I've done so far. So all of this has been secured and sealed with the silicone. It's ready for tanking, just one or two more pieces to put in place. I'll try and explain what I've done. I installed the base of the composting toilet, and then I secured the base to the bottom of the van and to the back of the shower. Then what I did was I cut a front panel and I fixed that with screws. Then I also cut a bottom panel where your feet would be going underneath, and then below that I cut very roughly another panel. Then I secured the top of the composting toilet with screws. Then the next thing I did was I fitted the inside panel, and I fitted them again with screws and filled them in. The next thing I did was fit this front section of the shower, and what I did was I have this switch for the LED light. On the back of these LED switches you have an M3 sticky pad. You take off the back of the sticky pad and you stick it to a wall. So what I did was I took off the back of the sticky pad and I stuck this onto it from behind, and then I screwed in on either side into the plywood, and then that's keeping that onto the plywood, and this is kept in with silicone. So I'm hoping that will keep in, and that's for the control panel. The next step was I installed these strips just to cover up the bare wood and to give it a bit more protection, and the same here on this, and then the same here. I did a strip here and I just fixed that with some Sikaflex, just set it down, and these side ones I fixed with some 4x16 screws. And now the last thing to do is cut a piece for here. Oh yeah, and I also, on the inside, before I put on this strip, I put on this inside strip, and then I push that strip up against this. You now have a block of marine ply protecting that batten up along the side wall. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to cut strips for here, and then once they're in place, I'm going to run a bead of the waterproof silicone down along here. So I'm going to ply line all this, the inside of it here. This is going to get tanked, so I'm going to put the butyl tape all along on the inside, all along here, here, and then tank up, prime it, tank it. So that's all complete. Now I'm just going to silicone all the edges along here, and this bead here that I cut a bit short, but that'll be all fine because this is all going to be tanked. I've now attached the piano hinge to the lid of the composting toilet, so I will now attach the opposite side of the piano hinge to the top of the composting toilet. The next stage in this wet room install is a thing called tanking, and what tanking is, basically it waterproofs the entire area before you tile. You can also paint over it instead of tiling, and it will still remain waterproof. And also the way tanking is done, it allows for movement and flexibility, the movement of plywood or woods. That's why I've decided to go for this tanking system. It comes in this big bucket. You have two of these waterproof tanking tape. It's a butyl tape that seals all the corners and edges and seals the shower tray from any water getting into those areas. To install the tanking tape, you have this roller. So basically you stick it on and roll it in, compress it in with this roller. It's pretty straightforward. It tells you exactly what to do on the instructions. The first thing to do is to coat everything in this primer that primes everything for the actual tanking paint. So they call it 2 coats of the tanking membrane. The first coat will be going horizontal and the second coat will be going vertical, and that's to make sure that you're overlapping and you're not going to miss any areas. As you can see, I've covered the shower tray, but I've left the edges. That's because the thickness of the edge of the shower tray, approximately the same thickness of this butyl corner tape, and what this does is it bends. For example, I'd stick this side onto the shower tray, the lip of the shower tray, and then the other half will be going onto the edge of the wall, so that will give a seal to all the shower tray. And that's basically how you're going to do it up along the walls, and then all in along here you're going to have to cover. So that's the first part of this 3-part system kit. You have to prime the area, and then you have to lay down the tape. You have to tape all the joints and all the corners and make sure that those are all sealed up with the butyl tape, the strips. You get 2 rolls of that, and then you put on the membrane, the tanking membrane. It says drying time is between 1 to 2 hours, so I'll come back in about an hour and a half and see whether this has dried or not, and I'll just give you a look at the way it looks now. So there it is, and as you can see, maybe I shouldn't have varnished the seat because the primer hasn't soaked in, but I'm hoping that the tanking membrane will stick to the seat. And all down along here we sealed it all, the primer all in here, all that wall, all the back wall, and it's just this because I varnished it. The primer is now dry, and now it's time to apply the tanking tape. And what this tape does is it seals all the joints. So if you look on this side, you have like a mesh. So the first part of the shower I'm going to start with is the shower tray. I'm going to cover all the edge of the shower tray, and then from there I'll cover the vertical joints in the shower. So let's give that a go. So we're going to do another strip here, and what I'm going to do is take off one side and then you fold it up. Then you get your roller and you roll it out. Make sure you don't have any creases in it or any bubbles. So because this is taller on this side, I'm going to actually cut it. And I'll use a Stanley blade to cut it. Right, so that's now 2 joints of the shower tray done. I've just 2 more to do, and then what I'll do is I will come back to you and I will show you how I'm going to do the vertical edges of the shower. The last thing to tape are the vertical joints in the shower. So I'm going to start with this one back here. Because this is curved, because the side of the van is curved, I'm actually going to have to cut this in probably 3 sections. I assume that this is better put on all in one, so just if you could put it all on in the one go without cutting it is probably the best solution, but because of the curve I have to cut it. And so what I'm going to do, just to make sure that that joint is completely waterproof, is I'm going to overlap it just a small bit. Take off one side, and then what you do is turn it over, and you want to put it flat against that side. That gives you control when you put it up against the wall. Then when you're happy with how it's sticking on one side and that it's in place correctly, then what you do is you take off the tape from the other side. So that's how I've applied the tanking tape. I'm going to finish off the remaining joints and then make sure everything is sealed up, all the joints have been taped, and then I will come back to you and I will show you how I'm going to apply the tanking membrane, which will be the waterproofing of the whole wet room. Right, so now we can see a lot better because I have the LED light hooked up. I'll just show you it. That's the LED light that's going to be there. That's one LED light, and then the LED strip. It makes a big difference. The tanking tape goes on all the corners. Alright, so what it does is it seals the corners and it makes them waterproof, so no water will actually leak in. And then you put them also here where you have the hot and cold taps. So I was thinking when I was putting it on to try and get this gap here on either side of the seat as small as I can, that it would be a good idea to tank it while I was tanking the whole out of it, and then come along with a Stanley blade and then cut out where the actual cut was for the seat, so you can lift it up, and the same on the front, just cut it there. So then that means that that gap is going to be very, very small. It's going to be literally the width of a Stanley blade compared to the width of a saw blade. So I'm going to do that now, and let's see how we get on. Now that I've cut it all around with the Stanley blade, let's see if it works. So there we go, it works. And that just means that the gaps all around the seat of the composting toilet will be literally the size of a Stanley blade. It doesn't leave a gap because it's butyl tape. You cut it and the butyl tape will go like this, and then it'll go back in, because that's the way the butyl tape goes. It doesn't, you don't leave a big gap in it. I'll show you what I mean. This is what I mean. If I show you, say here, so there's actually no gap there, because when you cut it, you're cutting into the butyl tape, and if you see what I mean there. So I'm hoping that that seal will be good enough once I paint over all this, and that when you're having a shower, that seal will be good enough and it won't be leaking. Because once I have it painted, I can test it, and if it is leaking any bit, what I'll do is I'll get waterproof strips. So I get waterproof strips, and I'll put the sticky side on this side, the sticky side on this side, and then it'll be overlapping here. So then when I do lift it up, that it's going to come up with the composting toilet, and when you lay it flat down, that when the water hits the composting seat, that it will just run off. I'm happy with how that has turned out, and now what I'm going to do, I'm going to paint it white and start wrapping it up. The shower is now fully painted. I gave 3 coats of white weatherproof outdoor paint, so it's specifically for harsh weather conditions, so it's good for water, and I'm hoping it's going to last a long time. So I gave it 3 coats. The 3 coats was sufficient to cover the blue. I could probably give it another coat, but for now the 3 coats is going to do. We'll start here, and as you can see, I've installed the shower faucet to the left of the composting toilet, and that's because I didn't want your head to be banging off the handle of the faucet, and that also means that I was able to place the shower rail in the center of the shower. And to the left of the shower rail I placed a corner shelf, and it's an aluminium corner shelf specifically for showers, so it won't rust, and it's got these hooks here. Got these 3 hooks so you can hook stuff onto them. And then here is the shelf. I got a piece of aluminium strip, and I'm going to put it onto the front of it. The aluminium strip will then keep any shampoos or conditioners or soaps in place here. Up here I have the copper rail for the shower curtain, and what I did was I just drilled a hole on both ends and slid in a bit of 8mm copper piping that I used for the gas. I popped that in on either end, and then what I did was I used these brackets here, so one there and then one here, and I secured them to the ceiling. You can get these brackets in any in DIY plumbing shop. It gives it a nice finish. On the roof I have perspex, and that is screwed to the roof just using regular screws. I filled those screws in with some of the water resistant silicone. What that perspex does is it will soften the LED lights, and I also have one light above here. It's an LED light, and that's controllable. That's the LED light is controlled via this switch panel here. That's the end of this episode. I hope you've enjoyed it. This is the final episode in the installation of the shower and composting toilet, and I hope it gives you some ideas and some tips for your own van build. If you did enjoy it, please do give it a like. Also, remember to subscribe to the channel and click the notification bell icon. That means you'll be the first to be notified for future videos in the van build series, and I will see you all in the next one. Good luck.